We're about to go beyond the stars and see a little demo of Stellaris. This is a game that I've been waiting to get my hands on for a long time. I'm very close to getting my hands on it, but we're going to get a demo here from Henrik, so enjoy.
Cool. Well, it's always great to show off this game, and previously we've mostly shown the early game and its particular focus on exploration and discovery, which kind of separates this from a classic 4X game, for example. But then when you reach the mid-game, it becomes more of a classic grand strategy title from Paradox, and that's what I want to show you today, basically. So I'm going to load up one of the save games that I've prepared, and let's take a look at that. So, where are we? Here we are. Load it up. And in this particular game, I basically cheated a bit and created a federation together with the first alien empires that I've encountered. I don't think we've...
Is it cheating, or is it a little bit too soon to do that, or what?
No, yeah, it's, you know, I just wanted to show a federation, and you need 4 member states to do that. And you know, it's easy if some of them are fairly pacifistic and like to cooperate, and xenophile empires and so on. But if some of them are militaristic and xenophobic, it's kind of hard to get them to agree to this. And those would not normally be the type of countries you would have in a federation. So a federation is basically a deeper form of an alliance, and we have a special overview here. It's still a little bit rough, this interface here. So you can see the federation is called the Harmonious Axis. It has a president, and that's me, the Miran hegemony. And it has various member states, and you can see their opinions of you and their military strength and so on, and when the next rotation of the presidency is. So, you know, there are pros and cons to having a federation versus having a normal alliance. In an alliance, you're still an autonomous state, basically, and you can do everything on your own except declaring war, which you have to vote for. But in a federation, you have an executive, your chief executive officer, basically, who decides, a bit like the president of the United States. So, you know, since I'm the president, I can declare war as I want to, and the other member states will just have to agree. But then the presidency rotates, and you know,
very powerful every 4th term, and then
exactly, yeah, that's the thing. And if I have many more member states, it's going to be, I'm going to have to wait for a while until it's my turn again, basically. So one of the other cool things about the federation system is that you share technology with the other member states. And again, this is sort of a bit of a placeholder interface here, but I can make ship designs for the federation using all the best components of all the member states. So that means that a federation has kind of a technological edge over bigger homogeneous empires, basically. And that's probably what you want to do. If you're a small country, you probably want to band up with other small countries against the big bads of the galaxy, essentially. Of course, one of the downsides to being in a federation is that you have to share victory with the other members, because in this game we actually have victory conditions, unlike, for example, Crusader Kings 2 or our historical games. So, what else? I can show you some regular diplomacy, which I don't think we've shown before. This is the list of countries that I have discovered, and as you know, in Stellaris you need to make kind of first contact to actually be able to conduct diplomacy. Until then, aliens are basically known as threat alpha, or you know, the bogies or the shriekies or whatever, something like that, and then you have to research that. But this is what it looks like when I actually talk to other aliens. And again, their opinion values are very important, and I can see some stuff about their military strength compared to mine, etc., etc. So let's take a look at communication with aliens. I don't think we've actually shown this before. You know that the alien empires are all procedurally generated in Stellaris, so that you will never meet the exact same aliens twice. And we do this, or make it interesting, by having them express their personality in various ways. For example, the room here tells me that this is an individualist empire. It's kind of Art Deco-ish. I can see their home planet type outside the window, and there's supposed to be a cityscape here as well, depending on how big their home planet city is and so on. And then we have texture variations to a lot of these aliens. Well, all of them will have some variations. So, you know, sometimes they might be striped in the face or and so on.
Is that also depending on what kind of planet they live on, or is it more like
that's just random? For example, humans have like a bit of racial diversity in their leader portraits and the population units and so on, and the same thing goes for the aliens. I can see here how they are disposed towards me, what their founding species is, because you can integrate lots of alien population units in this game in your empire. But your founding species will always have a kind of a special place in the empire and so on. And this is kind of a summary of what their personality is like. It's a democratic crusaders, which, I don't know, that sounds a bit like the US, doesn't it? So they're fanatic...
Freedom fighters.
Yeah, freedom fighters, world police. So they're fanatic individualists, militarists, and that's a pretty cool combination, I think. Many of the diplomatic options are not here, as they would be in our other games. They're actually inside the kind of trade deal interface, where you can trade stuff for other stuff. So I can, for example, agree to a monthly transfer of minerals in return for a research agreement or something like that. And I can see how likely they are to accept that offer. So a lot of the diplomacy is actually done through this trade interface here.
So, I mean, when you're in a federation and you want to trade technology, for instance, you do have access to that if you want to build the federation ships, for instance. So, yeah, but you might want to have that for yourself as well.
Yeah, you help each other out in a way, and that's good as long as you plan to stay in the federation. Now, these research treaties are just, you know, it gives you a bonus to your research points.
So you still have your own sort of...
Yeah, you keep your own technologies. You don't actually trade individual technologies with each other. I find that in games where you can do that, it usually ends up where everyone has everything, and it kind of equalizes out. So I'm not a huge fan of that type of mechanic. So this is what we've done.
Because it also is interesting in a federation, you will specialize. Perhaps this federation will be stronger if each member is specialized towards something else, because then you can all pick the best.
That's definitely an interesting option, particularly in a multiplayer game, that you agree and decide to specialize on different things. Definitely. You can also trade strategic resources here, and that's kind of an interesting and very crucial part of the gameplay.
What's that? Betharian stone.
Betharian stone, yeah. These strategic resources are used, for example, in your spaceports to upgrade to very powerful special modules that can, for example, give you all the ships you build there will be more powerful, have more better shields and so on. But they will tie up then one of these strategic resources you have access to. So you can trade them with each other as well, and they're kind of distributed in the galaxy, at generation of the galaxy, in different areas. So unless you want to fall behind, you're really going to be pushed to take by force or by trade various regions of the entire galaxy, basically.
So that's sort of maybe in the beginning of the game, that's one of those sort of important things that players in AI will strive for.
Well, in the mid-game, I would say. It takes a while to discover these strategic resources and so on. Okay. So, and this is one of the things we don't want people to have to worry about when they start playing the game. So, you know, unlike our other games, you start out small and then you can learn more about the game as you go. And this is one of those things that, you know, new players don't worry too much. We'll teach you what this is all about. And that's also true of the population factions in the game. I mentioned this before, I think, to you. Not sure, but anyway, let me show you quickly. In Stellaris, each unit of population has its own happiness and its own ideology, much like that empire you saw was a fanatic individualist militarist empire. The different pops also have different ethics, or can have at least. And that means that they will tend to sort themselves into political movements that we call factions. Yeah. Now this is, since I cheated a bit, this is still fairly early in the game, and there is only the loyalist faction, which is kind of an anti-faction almost, you could say. But there is various ways I can deal with these factions. I can I can tyrannize them by spending our political currency called influence, or I can try and increase the favor this faction holds with the population and so on. And the factions also tie into the government form you have. So each faction has a leader, and when there is an election in a democracy, all these faction leaders are up for the presidency, if you will, which will give you various bonuses and so on during their term in office.
So is this something that's being simulated as well on the other empires or the parts of your federation, that maybe they'll have a revolt?
Oh yes, absolutely, and you can support the revolt, or an independence movement within another empire. Because
I can imagine that if you're fanatically militaristic for a long time, maybe some people will be a little bit tired of that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the kind of thing we want to model, especially if you grow big and you have a huge blob of an empire, because the further away from your capital people live, the more they tend to diverge and develop their own like frontiersman spirit or whatever. So they kind of lose touch a bit with the guiding ideology of the entire empire. So that's one of those things you need to keep track of in the mid-game as well, making sure your population is happy, and etc., etc. Now I happen to be, let's see, what is my government form here? I am a despotic empire. That means that I have a kind of a cool special ability. I can build a prestige military station.
Sort of like a Death Star?
Yeah, well, sort of like a Death Star per ruler lifetime, basically. Okay. So, and it's going to be named after my ruler as well. So this is a pretty cool feature. Other government types can instead build a prestige military ship, so they're like bigger and they have the same weapons and so on, but they have like a bonus to how effective they are. So they're kind of scary ships or stations and so on. If you're a pacifist, instead you can build like an amusement park or a beautiful garden on your planet and so on. Yeah. So they
all have sort of bonuses that are worthwhile.
Yeah, and the idea is you can only do it once per ruler lifetime, essentially. So that's another little cool mechanic I could show you here. I'm just going to load up another save game now and show you a multiplayer game we had at the office. Now bear in mind that the names of the various empires here and so on are pretty crazy and, and insane, because there are various people that have been playing these. So I'm actually the empire of the Superbirds. There happens to be a Soviet Union here. And I even think that we have some kind of earthlings, except that they are actually mushrooms. But I'll see if I can show you that. But here's a list of a lot of empires, because this game has been going on for a long time. And as you can see, there are various diplomatic statuses. I'm in an alliance with a funny name, laughing my ass off. So this is a mature game, if you will, more of a late game situation. I now have access to a bit bigger ships, so you can see I have cruisers here and corvettes in this fleet. And I'm going to show you something we call sectors. And this is something you need to do when your empire becomes a bit too big. The thinking is basically, planet surfaces are represented in the form of tiles. And if you have to build things and micromanage your population, it's going to get a bit much eventually. And that's one of the functions that these sectors fulfill. You can assign a leader character, a kind of governor, to an entire sector of planets. And then you can give various orders to how you want that sector managed. So, how much minerals and energy, crystals, or credits is it supposed to contribute with? And I can even help them by giving them some stuff if I feel that they're not doing well enough. I can give them a focus, like an industrial focus or a military focus, and so on. The trick, of course, or the interesting thing about this is that sectors tend to want autonomy a bit more, or at least my malcontent population units will tend to move and coalesce in various different sectors. So this is my serendipity sector here. It's actually not even connected to the rest of my empire, which makes it kind of useful to have it under control of a sector governor. But it's still considered part of my own empire. The thinking is a bit similar to Crusader Kings 2, where you have like vassals, so that your own personal territory never really grows that much. Even in the late game, you might control, say, maybe twice as much as you did in the beginning, but not that much. And the rest is actually controlled by these vassals. And here we call them sectors, essentially. So if I want to create a new sector, I need to make sure that the entire sector is coherent, basically, or neighbors each other, all the systems I want to put in it. And I'm limited in the amount of sectors I can have as well, so I need to think about that carefully. And that's basically what I had for you in this kind of mid-game demo.
Very cool. It's like when you see this, you're just itching to get in there yourself and then start playing.
That's awesome. I hope you get the chance soon.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.